Colin's Last Stand needs your help. If you like what CLS does, whether here on SideQuest in the eclectic interview podcast series Fireside Chats or the retro and nostalgia-fueled show Knockback, please consider showing your support at patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. Doing so not only ensures that CLS keeps making content, but it also gets you cool perks, including exclusive podcasts, early access to shows, the ability to vote on show topics, and much more. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. Without you, Colin's Last Stand cannot and will not exist. Now, on to the show. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Colin's Last Stand SideQuest right here on YouTube. My name is Colin Moriarty. As always, I hope today's video finds you and yours very well. Today, I want to talk about Xbox One. We haven't talked about Xbox in a while, and I want to talk about the exclusive catalog of games on the console. There are a lot of things that Microsoft has done right with Xbox One. We're going to talk about those, but when it comes to games, because these are video game consoles, this has been an abject failure for Microsoft. This generation has just not panned out. So without further ado, let's jump into the video. I'll see you on the other side. Back in January of this year, I posted an Xbox-centric video that resonated with SideQuest's audience. The video focused on Xbox One and examined what I felt were some really huge victories Microsoft had quietly scored with its console, even as it's getting trounced by PS4 in terms of sales, and even as it's losing the optical battle with press and players alike. It's easy to beat up on the console that's lagging behind, but it takes nuance to see that being in second place can benefit the wider ecosystem in the long run. When I see really forward-thinking services like Xbox Game Pass, or increasingly ubiquitous backwards compatibility with Xbox 360's vast library, I see significant wins that are undoubtedly going to force the competition's hand. In other words, these moves haven't just been fantastic for the Xbox fanbase, it's going to be pretty awesome when these moves inevitably bleed into PlayStation 5's roadmap too. Competition breeds this sort of nimbleness, this brand of risk-taking, this sort of corporate desperation that leads to very good things, to new industry standards others want to mimic. With all of that said though, we'd be foolish to turn a blind eye toward Xbox One's exposed Achilles heel, a devastating weakness that didn't hurt Microsoft's console from the outset, but one that has really injured perception of the hardware over time as we navigate its fifth year on the market. Worse yet, it's not a flaw even remotely shared by its competition, and it's a deficiency that's extremely time-consuming and expensive to correct. That weakness is a severe lack of exclusive games of both the first and second-party variety. While Microsoft can compete with and even beat its competitors in services, there are few people who will claim PlayStation Network is better than Xbox Live, for instance. PS4 has obliterated Xbox One so severely on the exclusive games front that it's completely impossible to ignore. This is doubly true when you start working in Nintendo Switch, which hinges entirely on its exclusive offerings. It's not that Xbox One is competing and losing here, it's that it's barely taken to the field to compete at all. And ultimately, consumers buy consoles to play games. Without them, you just have a box. As always, the players have spoken loudly. This approach has been a failure. This is a rare objective fact in a sea of subjectivity. It's simple really, especially when talking about Xbox One and PS4 on their own. If both consoles share most of their libraries with each other, and they do, then it's the incongruencies that act as differentiators. These differentiators can be as minor as frame rate or resolution, or as major as the actual games that simply cannot be played on the competition's hardware. Earlier in the generation, it was the former, the technological differences, that were the talk of the industry, but now, in the fifth year of the generation, people are talking about the latter in a growing and consistent crescendo. And for as impressed as I've been with those aforementioned tweaks and additions, like Game Pass or backwards compatibility, it seems that the consumer at large cares far less about that than I do. The easiest way to break this problem down is to simply compare libraries, but it's actually far more instructive to compare libraries through the lens of critical reception, because more doesn't always mean better. To do this, we don't have to look much further than Metacritic, which helpfully aggregates critical scores based on a secret algorithm of varying weights per outlet. Simply go to Metacritic and open up two tabs, one with Xbox One releases and one with PS4 releases, and you're going to be hit in the face with the obvious. In the list of top 25 best scored Xbox One games, only 3 of them can't be played on PlayStation 4, and 2 of those titles are the same game released separately, in this case Ori and the Blind Forest. Meanwhile, if you look at the same list for PlayStation 4, 10 of the top 25 games can't be played on Xbox One. That includes 3 of the top 5 best scoring games and 7 of the top 10 best scoring games on PS4. The highest rated Xbox One exclusive, Forza Horizon 3, sits at a very respectable 91. 7 titles, The Last of Us Remastered, God of War, Persona 5, Uncharted 4: Thief's End, Journey, Bloodborne, and Undertale, all have higher Metacritic scores than Xbox One's best scoring exclusive, and 2 more, Shadow of the Colossus and Flower, are tied with Forza Horizon 3. Hell, snap out of existence any PlayStation 4 game that's been brought over from old PlayStation hardware. So, The Last of Us, Journey, Shadow of the Colossus, and Flower. And you've still illustrated a dire picture. And if what's good for the goose is good for the gander, then you can also snap out of existence the Xbox One games that can also be played on PC, which in this case is all 3 aforementioned titles, leaving nothing behind whatsoever. I think there's an argument to be made for the volume approach, such as stating that PlayStation 4 gamers simply have more exclusives coming to the console, and therefore more of a reason to be excited. That's fair enough, I suppose, but it's not as if PS4 hasn't had duds. Some significant duds at that, like Knack or The Order 1886. Likewise, PlayStation 3 in the previous generation oft emphasized quantity over quality with mixed results. Quality counts most, even if quality comes at the cost of volume. Strangely though, it seems like Sony suffers from neither volume nor quality this time around. Microsoft's Xbox One, unfortunately, suffers from both. Microsoft is fully aware of this deficit and is apparently working feverishly behind the scenes to course correct. In November of last year, Xbox's Phil Spencer, who has done a really nice job of steering a rickety ship following Don Matrick's exit from Microsoft in 2013, finally spoke out on the matter with Bloomberg, noting that Microsoft needs to grow in this regard. Quote, "Our ability to go create content has to be one of our strengths. We haven't always invested at the same level. We've gone through ups and downs in the investment," end quote. But if you watch the interview with Spencer, and I encourage you to do just that, you'll see a man who's also throwing a ton against the wall to see what sticks. Xbox One is losing, so it can't possibly be about the console itself. Now it's about ubiquity. Now it's about engagement time and all of these meaningless corporate buzz terms that clearly aren't resulting in sales or a solidified place on the market. Spencer is a smart guy, so he has to know better, but his position puts him in a place where he needs to spin constantly. He understands full well it's about games, he just can't overtly say that, because if he does, he'll shine an even brighter spotlight on his company's shortcomings. Now, Microsoft has made a couple of smart investments in recent years, paramount among those the acquisition of Mojang, or Mojang, or however the hell you want to say it today, the creators of Minecraft. This sale didn't come cheap, but it brought in-house perhaps the single biggest, most important, and most lucrative gaming IP on the modern landscape. Yet Microsoft is unwilling to do what's necessary with Minecraft. Make it a true exclusive. Swing it like a goddamn broadsword. Isolated on Xbox One and PC, and perhaps mobile. Why is Minecraft still on PlayStation 4? Why feed a popular IP to your competitor? Do you think Sony would do the same thing? Even when PS3 was losing to Xbox 360, you didn't see Uncharted on Xbox, did you? This checkers mentality is weighing Microsoft down. Sony and Nintendo are playing chess. When Microsoft purchased Mojang in 2014, it should have been a victory for the Xbox brand. Instead, 4 years later, no one even associates Minecraft with Xbox. Do you think if Sony brought Mojang instead, people wouldn't associate PlayStation with Minecraft? I think we all know that Sony would be shoving PlayStation Minecraft down everyone's throats, probably to great effect. Subjective criticisms aside, investments like this haven't outweighed the glaring weakness in Microsoft's first party. Xbox's first party family is barely a half dozen strong, and none of them, not one studio, has the track record and gravitas that even a handful of PlayStation-owned studios command. 343 Industries is in decline, particularly after the utterly botched Master Chief Collection and the softly received Halo 5. The Coalition released Gears of War 4, which I actually liked quite a bit, but it certainly didn't set the world on fire. You have to feel sad for what Microsoft has done to Rare over the last decade, a company that's barely even a shadow of its former self, who recently put out the ambitious but seemingly stillborn Sea of Thieves. It's with racing-centric Turn 10 that you can probably find the most consistency and quality, but even then, it's negated by the fact that Microsoft's competitor owns a mirror image studio in Polyphony Digital. There's nothing here that differentiates Microsoft stable, and they simply aren't putting up the quality or volume necessary for the brand to start digging itself out of its hole. There's no Naughty Dog here. There's no Sucker Punch or Guerrilla Games or Studio Japan. There's nothing here whatsoever that would make Sony quake in its boots. Perhaps the biggest mistake of all with these studios, and with 343 Industries, Turn 10, and the Coalition in particular, is that Microsoft spawned and sustained studios overtly dedicated to existing IP, instead of leveraging their talents to create something new and exciting. I mean, both 343 and the Coalition are literally named after Halo and Gears of War lore, respectively. They've pigeonholed themselves. They voluntarily typecast their own talent. It'd be like Naughty Dog renaming itself Drake Industries and only using their talents to make Uncharted. It's a total waste, particularly because game studios are often so eager to flex their muscles in new ways. It was an eagerness for Naughty Dog to move away from Uncharted that gave us an even better franchise in The Last of Us. Guerrilla Games made nothing but Killzone for a decade, and then astounded when it moved away from that series and the shooter genre entirely, making one of the great open-world RPGs of all time. There are people at the likes of 343 and the Coalition capable of great things, but Microsoft is so risk-averse and dedicated to the past that it typecasts its own studios right on down to their names. It's strange. Without leadership at the top and without a source of sales or critical pride to point at, Microsoft has in turn had a hard time engendering meaningful second-party support, and it hasn't been able to negotiate major third-party exclusives either. These are the games that fill in the cracks, that keep players engaged while they wait for what's truly big. Ratchet & Clank, Until Dawn, and even the upcoming Detroit Become Human aren't first-party developed games, but they're big to the PS4 audience. Where are Microsoft's equivalents? Platinum Games Scalebound was cancelled, as was the reboot to Phantom Dust, and we're somehow still waiting for Crackdown 3, while State of Decay 2 is finally nearing launch, but on Xbox One and PC simultaneously. The release schedule is a wasteland, at least when it comes to games only playable in that ecosystem, and while some people think some of it has to do with studio closures, the famous Microsoft-owned Lionhead was shuttered not too long ago, I think this is a lame excuse. As I pointed out in last week's video, Sony has shuttered a half dozen first-party studios in the last decade, and God of War just came out of a studio that had a game canceled 3 years into development on the back of severe layoffs to boot. This problem goes deeper. It's structural, and sadly, it appears embedded in Microsoft's culture. Hell, a game like Persona 5, a higher-scoring PS4 exclusive than any exclusive on Xbox One period, is a third-party game. Persona literally isn't even a PlayStation IP, nor was it made with Sony's money, and yet Atlas is so unconcerned with Xbox that it didn't even bother porting it. Did Microsoft even make a move to try and make that situation different? We saw this with Square Enix's Nier Automata, Tecmo Koei's Nioh, and others too. Publishers who were once on great terms with Microsoft, but who couldn't even be troubled to bring their big games over. Does Microsoft even care? And when the shoe could be on the other foot, it doesn't work out so well, and Sony seems to care a great deal. EA's Titanfall could have been a huge win for Xbox, but it was clear that Electronic Arts couldn't wait to get the sequel onto better-selling hardware. And who could forget the fiasco surrounding Rise of the Tomb Raider, and the faux exclusivity that everyone could see through from a mile away? Why weren't those games locked down? We're talking about a company doing nearly $100 billion in annual revenue, my friends. There is no excuse. Building strength here is going to take lots of time and lots of money, and that's why I feel bad for Xbox gamers, because the reality is it's not going to get better anytime soon. Games take 3, 4, or 5 years to make these days, especially if you're talking about AAA exclusives. Building studios from the ground up is difficult, time-consuming, and expensive, but it might net the greatest assets if given the time necessary. Buying studios is easier, but is Microsoft willing to pay the premium to do so? And are there interested parties that would want to jump into bed with Microsoft at this somewhat dire point in Xbox's history? Can Microsoft even work things out with second and third-party partners to get them the software that will help turn Xbox around once more? It's uncertain. I don't blame anyone for being pessimistic here. What evidence have you seen that would make you feel otherwise? Word is that Microsoft is going to go big at E3 this year, and frankly, I believe it. It's far more believable than the silly rumors that they want to purchase Electronic Arts, at least. I wouldn't be surprised to see new IP revealed, a new studio acquisition or creation announced, and a foundational emphasis on games, games, games. I'm rooting for Microsoft to turn this ship around. I know a lot of players are. Whether or not they have it within them to accomplish this goal in the face of staunch competition is, of course, another issue entirely. And I think even the most optimistic among us have to accept that this generation is a wash, and that you'll only see possible dividends with the next console. At the outset of this video, I spoke about some moves Microsoft has made with the Xbox One that are such huge wins that it'll inevitably have bleed over into what the competition does next. I'd love to see Microsoft pioneer an approach to games that one day has an identical effect. Alright, that's it for this episode of SideQuest. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, leave your comments below. I'll be reading them. Thumb up the video if you liked it, thumb it down if you didn't, and please share SideQuest and all things Colin's Last Stand, fireside chats, knockback, etc. with friends and family. Let them know about the might, the majesty, and the wonder of Colin's Last Stand. I will waste no more of your time, but I do appreciate the time you did give me today. As always, I hope you and yours are well, and I will see you next time for more SideQuest. Until then, keep on gaming.